Well, hi there. Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So I do apologize that this setup wasn't done till today. I actually thought I did it after last week's meeting. I wrote everything down, but for some reason I didn't enter it. So, anyways, we got my water. I'm good to go. So we're going to be talking about four albums in particular. Basically, this is albums with that great four albums with that great artwork on them that also have great music on them as well. I've chosen four, just display them all so that everybody's aware of them right away. This is Wobbler's Hinterland. This is their debut album, actually. I have three debut albums here. I didn't realize it when I first put it together, but there are three. I'm going to fix this a little bit. The Voyage of the Acolyt from Steve Hackett, sorry. Hawkwind's Worrier on the Edge of Time, which is not a debut album. And Marillion Script for Jester's Tear, which is also a debut album. So I like all four of these albums. I wouldn't go as far to say that any of them are my particular favorite by the group. Maybe the Steve Hackett one is. I think it probably is. The other three could be at times, maybe. Maybe the Marillion one might be. And maybe Hawkwind one might be. But I'm not sure. I don't think the Hinterland one is. I'm pretty sure Dwellers of the Deep is kind of got that one under wraps there. So anyways, I'm just going to go over each of these albums and what I like about them and why I like the art. So we'll start with Marillion since it's on top here. Script for a Jester's Tear. I bought this on cassette back in 1983, the year it was released. And I liked it, but I didn't play it that much. Once I moved out, kind of didn't continue with the band after this album for at least another. I think the Childhood's End, or Childhood's End, which is the third album in their series, in their discography. I got that one. I'm just trying to remember exactly when I got that one. So I got that one maybe and I can't remember. I think I also had that on cassette too. Got that maybe 10, 15 years ago. Never drink when you're breathing. Not good for one's health. Yeah, I think I got the third Marillion album at a yard sale, or maybe it was at a thrift shop back in the early part of 2000s, like maybe 2005, 2006. And so that one started to become a little bit of a force with me. But I didn't really follow it too closely until I came on this channel, and then I started taking all this seriously. Now, I always liked this album. I don't know if it's my favorite. It's hard to say which Marillion album is my favorite. I like all four of the Fish era ones. I don't care much for any of the other ones that came out after it. So basically, I love the four first ones. I don't like the ones after that. There are a couple that came out with Steve Hogarth that people say have a lot of that original Marillion sound to them, but I don't own those ones. I own some other ones, but I just never I just don't feel anything for any of those albums. But this one, it's got 6 tracks on it. So this is the original band, of course. Just going to go through it a bit here. I do like the way the Marillion sets up their books too, easily accessible, like so many other. The thing about Marillion is they're very Genesis-like, of course. Fish, very. I don't know if he doesn't really sound a lot like Gabriel, but their songs, the lyrics are very wordy. There's a lot of wordiness to them, which is very similar to Genesis as well. I think so. This has Fish, Mick Pointer, Pete Traveris, Trey. I can never get this guy's name. Traveris. That's what I'm trying to say. Steve Traveris, Steve Rothery. Pete Traveris, Steve Rothery. I'll get it right yet. And Mark Kelly, of course. So Traveris playing Rickenbacker, bass, PV amps, Fender fretless. So I'm assuming that's a type of bass, a fretless bass. Sorry. Steve Rothery, he's playing the SG-2000 Yamaha acoustic here. Squire 57 Strat, Fender Strat, and Marshall and Mesa Boogie amps. Then you've got Mark Kelly, Steinway Grand Piano, harpsichord, Mini Moog, Roland JP8, PBG Wave 22 emulator, Pro 1 and a Yamaha CS15 and a Korg CX3Y. So lots of different stuff here. This album came out, I believe it was in the early part of 1983, and that would make sense because I remember going to there was a small record store near Cole's bookstore on Yonge Street, right near where the Gameways Arc used to be, at Yonge and, oh God, I can't remember the name of the street, but we used to go to the Gameways Arc all the time. It was a 3-story building in an old bank building that had been hollowed out, and so they had 3 floors of Gameways Arc. There was always stuff going on there. There was Dungeons and Dragons tournaments, all kinds of stuff. We used to go there all the time. And then right kitty corner on the opposite angle was the Cole's bookstore. And then there was I believe a arcade next to that. And then there was a small record store, I believe, in there. And I think I went in there and bought the cassette version of Script for Jester's Tear. I do like the artwork on this, both front and back. You need to kind of have the front and back open so that you get the full effect of the album. He's in an apartment at a desk. What's kind of a makeshift, I guess it's a desk, wooden desk against the window, playing a violin. And of course, the little chameleon there on the chair, and the pictures on the wall showing obvious problems that this guy has. Anyways, really solid first starting album from them. Came out, like I said, in '83, and it had the opening title track, which is the way I really think that Pete Pardo was right. I really think that the title track should be the opening track. That's the one that's setting the stage for the entire album. And if the song's good enough to be your title track, if what you're going to name the album off, it should be at the beginning. My favorite track, of course, is the next one, the second one, He Knows You Know. This one is kind of a bit of a biting song. It's heavy, it's biting, it's got lots of good things going on it. The Web is probably the weakest track on the album. I never really kind of warmed up to it. It's not terribly memorable, not a bad song, but not terribly. Garden Party, fantastic tune. This is very Genesis-like. Love this track. It's probably, it's in the top two. He Knows You Know and Garden Party, probably the two best on here. Chelsea Monday, another really good track, and Forgotten Sons. Chelsea Monday, another really strong track. So they got like about half the album is very strong. The other half is okay. There's no bad tracks here. This is a good debut album. Really an important debut album for prog music too, because by the time this came out, prog music, the 70s prog music was dead, completely dead. And many people felt that prog music was completely dead. And I remember my friend saying, no, you got to hear this band, Marillion, kind of very old school Genesis sounding. And I got it. It's actually, it does sound like old school Genesis, but it's more crystal clear sound, a little bit more bitey, if you want, a little bit heavier in some ways. The good part is that this was kind of the face of new prog music. This is where prog music was going to go. At least that's the way we felt when we first heard it. We thought, oh, prog music isn't completely dead. This is very good. And me and my friend had discussed the title Marillion for the band. And he said, yeah, it comes from the Silmarillion from Lord of the Rings. I don't know if that's true or not. Back then I believed it. Maybe it was true. Maybe it isn't. I'm not 100% sure. But it would make sense if it was. So Marillion is the first of the 4 albums we're talking about tonight. The next one up, Hawkwind's Worrier at the Edge of Time. This has got that similar thing going on that we just did with Marillion, in that you need to open both sides, back and front, so you get the full effect of the album. Really a very spectacular cover, I think. This is more of an artistic cover. I'm not even sure who does the... I know I read it somewhere. I'm just not seeing it here. So this original lineup with Derek Brock, guitar, synthesizers, bass guitar on track 4. Nick Turner, tenor and soprano, sax, flute. Lemmy from Motorhead, but pre-Motorhead here, on bass. Simon House on mellotron, Moog, piano, synthesizers, and violin. Simon King on drums and percussion. Alan Powell on drums and percussion. So you got a couple of guys playing drums here at the same time, pretty much. This is a good album. It's one of their best, if not their best. I'm not sure how I would rank this, but definitely going to be in my top 3 or 4, I think. Nice shot of them here too. I do love the cover, like I said, quite a bit. The full cover. Twin Moons. It's actually just, it's almost like a, in fact, that's what it is. It's just a carbon copy from one side to the other. But the only difference here, of course, is the obvious, is that the horseman on the edge isn't on this side. Got a few smaller differences, stuff hanging down, the cloud slightly over. This stuff is over here. So it's supposed to be like 2 different ledges, but it's just funny how they both come out at the same place. You can see obvious differences in the picture if you look at it closely. I've always kind of liked this cover. It would have made an excellent poster, and I'm sure one exists somewhere, so I would have to look for it. So this album, I believe it came out in 74 or 75. 75 it was. So this was the album that came out after A Hall of the Mountain Grow, which is often considered their big Magnus Opus album. I actually prefer this one just a little bit more. The final thing is the bonus track on here is called Motorhead. Assault and Battery, very good. The Wizard That Blew His Horn, I like that. A Demented Man, another good one. Standing at the Edge, Spiral Galaxy 28948. Warriors, this one does not have Warriors at the Edge of Time. It's just a song called Warriors. Dying Seas and King of Speed. So very kind of space rockish, proggy in a lot of ways. A pretty standard early Hawkwind album, really. Man, I don't know if I'm going to make it very far in this. I'm just so tired today. Bit of a problem sleeping the last couple nights, but trying to get it, I'm just going to keep it up. Sorry, my words are even getting tangled. Yeah, so very spacey. I think this is kind of thought of as the last album of that early period, the big period for them. The early albums, they had about 5 or 6 in a row that were really good. I actually like the first 2 quite a bit as well. But this one, I don't know, it's probably a top 2 or 3 for me. Really good, solid, and having that really strong Hawkwind sound. Now, Hawkwind from this point on will release a lot of albums, as we know, probably another 30. And they were all hit and miss. Some of them were really good, some of them not as good, but up until this album, they were all good. So the next album up I'm going to talk about is Steve Hackett's first solo album. Get a look there. This is Voyage of the Acolyt. Kind of a very kind of, I call this almost a, kind of a science fiction-y cover, I guess, maybe. To me, when I look at it, I think like this one. This one's a little bit more science fiction-y. I think this one I think of as a little bit more fantasy-oriented cover, medieval almost in some kind of ways. But fantasy is the word that comes to mind. It's a nice album. Now, many people used to refer to this as the Lost Genesis album. Both Mike Rutherford and Phil Collins joining Steve Hackett on this album. I can see why they think it. It's a very, very kind of early Genesis sounding, almost going back to Trespass. It's got some, I feel a sense of that there, but Phil Collins' voice isn't nearly as frontal on this. He is doing lead vocals on some of the tracks, but they also have a woman doing lead vocals on some of the tracks, or at least on one track. I'm going to pull this out of here so we can get a look at it. This is of course, the debut album for him, his first one. Who would have known he would have gone on to do 27 albums? Some of them really good, some of them maybe not so good. Featured on this album, Steve Hackett, of course, on electric acoustic guitars and mellotron, harmonium bells, auto harp, and vocal effects. Sorry. John Hackett, his brother, playing flute, harp, synthesizers, and bells. And then you got Mike Rutherford on bass pedals, and fuzz bass 12-string. Phil Collins on drums, vibes, percussion, and he does, like I said, do vocals on the album. John Acolyt on electric Rhapsody, mellotron, harmonium, and piano. Sally Oldfield doing vocals, like I said. I think she just does vocals on one particular track. Robin Miller on oboe and chorus and cor angelus. Is that's French for something, but I'm not sure what. Solo, and then you have, Nigel Warren Green on solo cello. Yeah, some really good stuff on this album. Some of the earlier stuff, like at the beginning, I like Ace of Wands. Excellent opening track. Hands of the Priestess Part 1, and then there's a song between them, and then Hands of the Priestess Part 2. Okay stuff. Tower Shrunk Down. The Hermit is good. Star of Sirius is good. The Lovers is good. And then, of course, The Shadow of the Hierophant, which is probably the epic song and the most beloved song on this album. Easily could have been something that you might have seen on Wind and the Wuthering. Could have been on there. Could have been on Trick of the Tail. Would have fit right in. Great tune. Yeah, fantastic. So this came out in 75, it says, but I think it was actually 76. Anybody knows? I'm pretty sure it was 76, though, even though it does say 75 here, so possibly it was. Came out before they did the Trick of the Tail. I always thought they were about this. I thought they came out the same year, but makes kind of sense because they always refer to this as the missing Genesis album, and it comes out between the 2 years, between 74's release of Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and Phil Collins' vocal Trick of the Tail in 76. So, yeah, I can see why people came up with that. This is the Genesis album they didn't do in 75. Could have been that, but it would have had to have had Tony Banks on it, and it doesn't. So I don't think of it that way myself, but it's still a very good album. I like it a lot. Oh, I thought that was a break. It's just an air hole. Sorry. Next up is this album by Wobbler, Hinterland. So Wobbler, this is like a Genesis sounding album. And this is kind of a Genesis sounding album. And this is also kind of a Genesis sounding album without the vocal sound. There's no Genesis vocal sound here, but the music is similar in a lot of ways. Got a bit of a Yes feel to it as well. I think this band kind of started out with a more Genesis flavor, and then as they went along, they got more Yes-like. The music is really good. They got 3 of the 4 songs on the album are epic length. The title track, Hinterland, which is actually the second track. Now, normally I would say the debut should be the title track, as I've said, but there's a small acoustic bit at the beginning called Serenade for 1652, which is not even a minute length. It's 42 seconds in length. So technically speaking, Hinterland is the opening track, if you're going by that. Now, this is one of those albums, again, that I'm actually going to take it out because the view will be better from here. Is better if you open the entire thing. It has a much greater effect, if you can see that. It's almost Easter Islandish in some ways. Very good artistic stuff. It's almost like a wood that turns into a face at the end. I really like this cover quite a bit. It's my favorite of their covers, but not my favorite of their albums. But the track Hinterland goes on. It's epic 27-minute length song, 27 and a half minute, to be honest. It's got some really good and catchy instrumental parts throughout the album. This Hinterland has that. Probably my favorite track on here is the third track, Rubato Industry. Really good, strong, heavy at times, multi-layered. I wouldn't call it off the charts, detailed kind of Gentle Giant like stuff. Nothing like that. It's just very smooth sounding. Very strong track. And Claire to Obscure, the last track, 15, almost 16 minutes in length. Another really strong track. All 3 of the back tracks, which are basically, it's a 3-track album if you don't count the little bit at the beginning. All really good, all memorable, all fantastic instrumentation. Vocals aren't so good. I wasn't really 100% sold on the original vocalist. he wasn't a bad vocalist, but he just wasn't terribly memorable. Tony Johansson, not the best of vocalists. I prefer his replacement, a much better vocals. Frizzle. Well, Frizzle's the keyboardist. I'm drawing a blank on the other vocalist. Yeah, really good Norwegian band. Lots of strong instrumental, like I said, and all 5 of their albums are good. If Wobbler has one defect, if I was to point out one thing about them that kind of annoys me, is that this album came out in 2005, I believe. Yeah, I think it was in 2005, and they only have 5 albums. So they're putting out on average one about every 4 years, which is a little bit much of a gap. It's hard to get motivated for them when you just keep waiting for the next album. They have had gaps as big as 7 or 8 years in there. But kind of reminds me of Boston. I think Boston needed to pick up and do more albums, and these guys need to do the same thing. But they're still good, no matter how many they've put out. For me, it feels like they, because I started following them 4 years ago and all 5 of their albums are already out. But I know that it's going to be a 4 or 5 year wait before you get one. But to me, they've all come out fairly quickly. But for the average person, I get the problem. Wobbler, that's the last album that we're going to talk about. So those are the 4 albums I chose to talk about today. All of them, as you can see, excellent art, and almost all of them have this back cover that kind of matches the front and goes together. If you look, these first 3 all have this effect, which I like because it just expands the artwork. And the only one that doesn't is Voyage of the Acolyt. Some people say this is not the greatest of art, but I've always enjoyed the artwork of this person. I believe this was his, it doesn't say here, but I believe this was his wife's artwork. She did some of his other albums too, drawing pictures. Very good artist. Anyways, that's my take on the 4 albums with great artwork and great music. So anyways, I hope you've all enjoyed this episode. Please hit the like and subscribe. That's much appreciated. And we'll be back next week with another Into the Progverse episode. I will get it out early this week. I promise. I will check early in the week and it won't happen again. Anyways, take care. Have yourself a good evening and goodbye. Till next time on the Prog Monster.